Good evening, it's time for another Neofolk review. But before we get on to that, I want to make a very strong recommendation, especially for this holiday season. And that is the video game called Skyrim, which is an Elder Scrolls installation, the most recent. This is available on the big platforms. I just picked it up last week. And yes, I'm a big nerd like that. I've always been a video gameaholic. But this one especially appeals to me because it's steeped in mythology. It seems like something that was taken out of the Poetic Eddas. Extreme depth to it. Anybody who's into RPGs, going back to the old dice games or video games or any kind of fantasy element, this is pretty much a J.R. Tolkien fan's wet dream. Anybody who's into high adventure and all that stuff, Conan fans, it doesn't matter. This is a perfect game to buy for any red-blooded, testosterone pumping male. So anyhow, but you can play it in other ways too. Be thieves and mages and everything. So anyhow, all right, on to the review. The band is a German duo, husband and wife act, called Belborn, and they've had several albums. This is the first one I've listened to. It's their debut album by the same name. I believe they were also on World Serpent for a time, but I don't know. My memory may be faulty. Belborn. The album kind of starts out so-so. It doesn't sound like anything too special or out of the ordinary. You know, you hear the similar Neofolk patterns that you hear, but right away you hear that there's a little bit more martial influence in it. Some of the drumming right away. More pianos. I think sometimes even two pianos in some of the songs. It's kind of a slow starter. A couple of the songs, they're good, but nothing too special. Vocals, kind of the Neofolk style. But there's a song in there called Underling, and these are approximations or loose translations of the German. So my apologies if these aren't dead on. But the song is Underling, and that's pretty close to any kind of Neofolk rock song that I've heard. It has the band fully fleshed out. You have the acoustic guitar, the keyboards, the drums, the bass. I think there's electric guitar in that song. It's got everything. It's kind of a synergistic song where Belborn puts everything into it, and it just melds perfectly. Now, there's a couple songs that are stripped down, meaning just a guitar and vocal, or no drums at all. There's a song called Don't Shed a Tear, which is one of my personal favorites on the album. It's definitely the album highlight. Very catchy, sticks in your head even if you don't know exactly what's being said. And I think that's the chief strength of Belborn, is that being that they have some of that post-industrial or industrial part is a little bit more prominent. I think that industrial music may be closer to pop music. I'm not saying that they're a pop band, but industrial music in its genealogical evolution is closer to pop music than, say, just folk music. Because folk would, of course, have to go through, the country traditional sense, and then merged with rock and roll and stuff like that, if that makes any sense at all. So I think that Belborn has a real grasp on melodies and can really come up with a good catchy hook, and that's a great example of it, is that Don't Shed a Tear. And I think a lot of it also has to do with the sounds of the German language is different than the Romance languages like Spanish or French or Italian, in that it's more I don't want to say harsh, but it's more like crashing around and almost like sound effects. The phonetics are totally different. It's interesting to hear them in a song. A couple other standout tracks. Realms of Light is one. Again, kind of a stripped down one. And Prepare to March, it's pure martial industrial. One criticism of the band I would say is with the keyboards, especially earlier on the album. They can sound a little Casio, Mortis, Nintendo. It's a little goofy. But that's just the first couple tracks. Like I said, it's kind of a slow starter, and it gradually gets better and better. Anyhow, I really enjoy this album, and I recommend it. They have a lot of different styles within the Neofolk frame. I would give it a 4 out of 5.